The 2027 NFL Draft is absolutely loaded with talent. And since it's the offseason and there really isn't anything going on right now, let's take a look at Bleacher Report's new 2027 NFL Mock Draft. But before we begin, please make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel if you guys want to see more weekly NFL content, and leave a like on the video, because if you do, a football icon will appear on the screen. And without any further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, getting into things here, the 2027 NFL Mock Draft after the Browns trade Myles Garrett to the Rams and add another first-round pick. Obviously, in case you've been living under a rock, you would have seen that Myles Garrett has been traded to the Rams. It's pretty crazy. I made a video about that a couple of days ago. I recommend you guys go watch that. It was a pretty good video. And getting started here, they have the New York Jets with the number 1 overall pick, selecting quarterback Arch Manning from Texas. Of course, if the Jets do end up with the first overall pick, as of right now, I would say that Arch Manning would be the number 1 overall pick. Obviously, it's June right now, so we really don't know how this draft is going to look next offseason when these guys have played an entire year of college. They still have an entire season to go through before we can actually see which quarterback will be number 1. And there is definitely a lot of great quarterbacks in this class, but right now, Arch Manning is definitely my number 1. They say here that Arch Manning won't enter the 2026 campaign as the Bleacher Report scouting department's QB1. That's interesting. We'll see who they have number 1 later. He's still slotted here for 2 reasons. First, he can claim top status through continued development. Second, the New York Jets can't overlook the markability factor. That is extremely true. I've said this before. The last name on the back of Arch Manning's jersey will get him places in his NFL career because the markability factor. Like, if you have a Manning on your team, you will sell jerseys, like, point blank. This is definitely an evaluation year for Arch Manning. They say that Manning showed significant growth during his first full season as a starter by cleaning up his footwork and mechanics. His status will legitimately reflect his standing as a top quarterback prospect. Name recognition and raw talent will only take him so far. That's also very true. Obviously, Arch Manning is going to need to play like a very good player if he wants to go number 1 overall. But honestly, with what I saw in the second half of the season at Texas, I think Arch Manning is an extremely good player, and I think he is fully capable of going number 1 overall based on just talents. If you can cross off the last name on his jersey, I still think he has the potential to go number 1 overall. At number 2, the Miami Dolphins select Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver, Ohio State. This is by far the number 1 player in the class for me. If you guys watched my top 30 NFL players 5 years from now, I actually had Jeremiah Smith at number 1 on that list. I know it's crazy, he hasn't been drafted yet, but in my opinion, he is the best wide receiver prospect that we've ever seen. Right now, the Dolphins receiving core is just absolutely cheeks. Obviously, they drafted Chris Bell, but like other than that, the room is like there's no one in there. And as of right now, it really seems like they're gearing towards Malik Willis to actually be their quarterback of the future. They really hope it pans out that way. So, although there's probably quarterbacks on the board for them to select here, it makes sense for them to go a wide receiver to actually help out Malik Willis to see if he is the guy, because he did have a lot of great games on the Packers last season. They mentioned here that a decision will be forthcoming if the Miami Dolphins find themselves among next year's top 3 draft picks. In this instance, the team proves willing to give Malik Willis a second chance. Again, if you look at the Dolphins roster right now, it's probably the worst in the entire NFL. So Malik Willis doesn't really have any help besides Devon Achane. So you can't really look at his team and blame him, because I know they're going to be bad already, but it's going to be hard to blame Malik Willis if the Dolphins struggle next year. And truly, I think that after this year, Jeremiah Smith will keep his status as one of the greatest prospects of all time and will go top 3 in this draft regardless. If it's not the Dolphins picking and maybe the Browns will take him, a team will probably trade up for him if it's all quarterback needy teams in the first 3 picks. But at the end of the day, Jeremiah Smith is an elite player, and he will be going in the first 2 picks, or first 3. At number 3 here, they have my Cleveland Browns picking 3rd overall and taking quarterback Darian Mensah from Miami. He transferred from Duke this offseason. Now he's Miami's quarterback. They say the Myles Garrett isn't an indication the Cleveland Browns plan to tank this season. I think they meant to say trade there. The Myles Garrett is an indication. Okay, that makes no sense. The Los Angeles Rams simply offered a fantastic deal, while the Browns understood that Garrett's timeline doesn't match Cleveland's current roster trajectory. I completely agree with that. I think that although it sucks that Myles Garrett is gone, he was my favorite player. He's the best player in the entire NFL. He does not match up with the Browns' timeline. Obviously, we are not going to be competing for a Super Bowl within the next 3 seasons. And Myles Garrett probably only has 2 or 3 prime years left, so it made sense to get as much value for Myles Garrett as you can while his value is at its highest point. The latter is important because the Browns have yet to properly address the quarterback position after nearly 3 decades of failure. Shedeur Sanders should not be given every opportunity to prove he can be a long-term answer. If he doesn't, the Browns or Shedeur Sanders should be given every opportunity to prove he can be the long-term answer. I agree with that. If he doesn't, the Browns will move on again. I completely agree with this. I don't think Deshaun Watson should be the starter of this team next year. I don't care if he's better than Shedeur Sanders. We need to see what we actually have in Shedeur because he could be the guy. I'm betting that he won't be because he played terrible last season. I don't want to make any excuses for Shedeur. He was awful last season, and I really don't think he will be the guy, but we still have to wait and see and prove him with a better offensive line and some more weapons on offense. And they say here, as stated earlier, Manning isn't the Bleacher Report scouting department's quarterback one. Darian Mensah is. And that is interesting because, again, he will be playing at Miami for the first time last season. He didn't have a full year in Miami. He played at Duke last season, so obviously he can be facing some tougher competition this year. But yeah, at the end of the day, I definitely do want the Browns to take a quarterback in this 2027 class, especially now that we have those 2 first-round picks, because that second pick in the first round, which is going to be the Rams pick, which is probably going to be past pick 25, considering how good the Rams are going to be, can go to drafting another position of need, such as corner or even another receiver if the Browns want to. So yeah, I totally love the Darian Mensah at number 3 overall for the Browns here. At number 4, Arizona Cardinals, Dante Moore. This makes a lot of sense here. This is going into this mock draft. This is the first time I'm actually looking at it, when I'm reading to you guys right now. And I honestly thought that Dante Moore was going to be the second quarterback off the board. Here they have him going 3rd to the Cardinals. Obviously, the Cardinals are going to draft a quarterback in the 2027 class. I mean, there's some crazy shenanigans going on in the roster right now with Jacoby Brissett holding out for a contract. They drafted Carson Beck. They signed Minshew Mania. It's a crazy quarterback room there, but at the end of the day, I mean, we look at it, none of those guys are actually good enough to be the Cardinals' long-term starter. They say that in some ways the Cardinals would be better off without Jacoby Brissett on their team. I could see that. There is so much controversy with this guy right now. He's holding out for a contract. That just makes no sense. You're almost a backup quarterback, dude. The Cardinals should be perfectly fine with starting Minshew Mania this year, or even Carson Beck. Enter Dante Moore, the Oregon quarterback, who could have been a top 3 pick this year had he declared. Instead, the 21-year-old returned to campus for another season, where he could show improvement, particularly against top competition. That's very true. Again, Dante Moore was going to be a top 3 pick. He was probably going 2nd overall to the Jets in this year's draft if he declared. However, he decided to go back to college, maybe to avoid the Jets, but maybe to improve a little bit because he was a good quarterback prospect, but he definitely wasn't a great one. And I think going back to college could definitely help develop his game and even get him a higher draft pick overall, even though number 2 is pretty high. He definitely had a shot to do number 1 now. And honestly, if you look at the Cardinals roster right now, I think that this would be a way better situation for a quarterback than the New York Jets. So Dante Moore to the Cardinals would be good for him, and it would be good for the team, and it makes a lot of sense. At number 5, they have the Tennessee Titans selecting Dylan Stewart, the edge rusher out of South Carolina. Like I mentioned previously, the 2027 NFL draft class is absolutely loaded. Dylan Stewart is no exception to this. He is one of the best edge prospects that we have seen in so long. Probably the best one that we've seen since Chase Young. I'll reference my top 30 players in 5 years video because there are going to be a lot of players who are on this mock draft who are in that video. Dylan Stewart is one of them. This guy's an absolute freak of nature. The Titans would be the perfect fit for him considering they're starting to get that offense figured out now, and now it's time to add some key contributors to that defense. They say here that the additions of John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, Jordan Elliott, Alontae Taylor, Cordell Flott, and a first-round rookie Keldrick Falk will make this group far stingier than the one that finished 21st in total defense. That is true. I said earlier, of course, the Titans, their defense is still lackluster, but they're definitely making ways and moves to improve it. And everyone knows that in today's NFL, elite edge rushers are the most valuable position on the defense. We saw that with the Myles Garrett trade. We got 2 elite edge rushers in that trade. So grabbing an elite edge here makes a lot of sense for Tennessee. South Carolina's Dylan Stewart should be in consideration for the number 1 overall prospect into the 2027 class, though he needs to finish better in this fall. Otherwise, he has the type of skill set that every team wants working off the edge. He can give Saleh a Nick Bosa-like presence, particularly on passing downs when both John Franklin Myers and Falk reduce down in certain sub-packages. That is very true. Robert Saleh being the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, we all know Robert Saleh likes his big, speedy, powerful edge rushers, and Dylan Stewart is just that. At number 6, the Las Vegas Raiders are selecting edge Colin Simmons out of Texas. Again, this draft has 2 very good edge rushers. We have Colin Simmons and we have Dylan Stewart. We're going to have to see what happens this fall in the college football season to see which one of them actually ends up turning out to be the better prospect. As of right now, I think Stewart is a little bit higher than Simmons, but I mentioned that Stewart is probably the best edge prospect that we have seen since Chase Young. I think Simmons is probably the second best edge prospect that we've seen since Chase Young. I think he's better than anyone that went in last year's draft. He would have gone number 2 overall over David Bailey easily. The Raiders already tried to trade Max Crosby, but then he wound up back on the team. Obviously, we know that weird Baltimore situation. He failed his physical. So I definitely expect Crosby to be moved at some point, whether that be the trade deadline or the 2027 offseason. But if you're the Raiders and you're picking at number 6, it's either going to be a receiver. Cam Coleman is a name that I thought could go here, or it's going to be an edge rusher, Colin Simmons. You want a difference maker on this team for sure, and Colin Simmons is definitely that. Simmons has the burst, bend, and closing speed to be a high-level pass rusher at the professional level. The first-team All-SEC performer, led the conference last season with 59 pressures. Right now, the 245-pound underclassman is not built like an ever-down edge. However, he's only 20 years old and already understands how to get to the quarterback. Simmons' growth potential remains significant. That's very true. Obviously, we have seen a resurgence of undersized defensive ends making it to the NFL. Obviously, David Bailey is around 245 pounds, I believe. So Simmons could definitely use from some added weight here, but that does not change the fact that he has insane bend and is already an elite prospect who knows how to get to the quarterback. So I expect him to probably go in the top 5. They have him going 6 here, but we'll see how it shapes up in the 2027 draft. Number 7 here, they have the Pittsburgh Steelers going with quarterback Drew Mestemaker from Oklahoma State. Obviously, he played at North Texas last year, transferred to Oklahoma State, and this is where the draft gets very interesting because a team like the Steelers is definitely going to be needing a quarterback, but there is a lot of quarterbacks they could go with. They haven't said Lenore Sellers here yet. They haven't said Julian Sain. I'm not a big Julian Sain guy. I'm a big Lenore Sellers guy, but Drew Mestemaker above all those guys is quite interesting. We'll see how he does at Oklahoma State. Aaron Rodgers already stated that this is his last year. While the recent draft pick of Drew Aller and Will Howard shouldn't be viewed as anything more than lottery tickets, the Pittsburgh Steelers are firmly in the quarterback market and have been for the last few years. That's 100% true. Drew Aller's a bust. Will Howard isn't good. The Steelers will be needing a quarterback. Meanwhile, Drew Mestemaker is set to explode onto the national scene after transferring from North Texas to Oklahoma State. The reigning Burlsworth Trophy winner, as the best player who began his career as a walk-on, followed his head coach Eric Morris and joined the Cowboys program where the quarterback's arm and their high-flying offense will be on full display. That is true. It is definitely a prove-yourself year for Drew Mestemaker, but obviously, I think he led the nation in touchdowns last year. I'm pretty sure. Don't double-check that because I'm pretty sure he did. But so it's definitely going to be a prove yourself at Oklahoma State for him, though, because obviously he's not at North Texas anymore. Oklahoma State is a slightly bigger program than them. So yeah, but he definitely has the arm talent to go high in this draft. I don't know about higher than guys like Lenore Sellers or CJ Carr even, but I definitely could see him going in the top 10. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are a perfect match for him. Head coach Mike McCarthy, this is the quarterback archetype that he likes. So yeah, this pick just makes a lot of sense. Moving on to number 8 here. Here's the guy I just mentioned, Atlanta Falcons quarterback CJ Carr, Notre Dame. Me personally, I think that CJ Carr is better than Mestemaker, but obviously these guys haven't played the season yet, so we're just projecting things here, and they have Mestemaker having a great year. The Falcons taking CJ Carr at number 8 is interesting because that means either Michael Penix or Tua did not work in Atlanta, and they're actually going to use a high draft pick on another quarterback, which the last time they did that, obviously, it was Michael Penix, and it didn't really work out too well for them. Obviously, they fired Raheem Morris and they hired Kevin Stefanski to be their new head coach. So it's definitely a new regime taking place for the Atlanta Falcons. And I do think drafting a quarterback, honestly, would be the right move here for them. General manager Ian Cunningham and head coach Kevin Stefanski weren't a part of the brain that drafted Michael Penix Jr. That group may have brought in Tua Tagovailoa, but the former Miami Dolphins first-round pick signed a one-year prove-it deal. Both true. I don't think Tua is that good of a quarterback. I think that he won't be able to prove himself fully to the point where Atlanta shouldn't draft a quarterback in this year's class. And obviously, Michael Penix Jr. is a bust. I don't think he's good. I think that he will be benched. I think that Tua will play the entire year. I want to see what they have on Carr here. They say that CJ Carr gives Stefanski a smooth operator who can effectively run the coach's offense system. The Notre Dame's product presents Brock Purdy-like potential working in that particular scheme. That is exactly how I view CJ Carr as well. He is not going to be a Lenore Sellers, a Lamar Jackson, I should say, honestly. Like, he's not making plays outside the pocket. He is what, like, I guess you could call him a system quarterback, when I think that's a dumb expression because, like, everyone likes to say that Brock Purdy is a system quarterback. But if you can thrive in a particular system and just be a pocket passer, you're still a very good quarterback. And that's exactly what CJ Carr is. And I know that Kevin Stefanski is a heavy RPO play action kind of scheme. At least he was in Cleveland with Nick Chubb. And now that he has Bijan Robinson in that backfield, I wouldn't expect that to change at all. So I feel like a guy like Lenore Sellers would make a lot more sense here, but still can't complain with the Falcons going with a QB. At number 9, the New Orleans Saints are going with cornerback Leonard Moore. Again, this is another guy that was in my top 30 players in 5 years. Leonard Moore is one of the best cornerback prospects that we have seen over the last half decade. Obviously, the Saints rebuild is starting to ramp up a little bit as they have Tyler Shuck now, who is he was kind of a lottery ticket pick. No one really thought he was going to be anything great. I guess the Saints did. They chose him in the second round. But he definitely had a great rookie year, and he's now going to try to prove himself in year 2. Obviously, they took Jordan Tyson. They have Chris Olave. They just signed Travis Etienne from the Jaguars. So their offense is really coming around. So in the 2027 draft class, defense is definitely going to be their number one priority. Leonard Moore is arguably the highest rated cornerback prospect since Patrick Peterson became a first-round pick in 2011. So they're saying that Moore is actually the best cornerback prospect in the last 15 years. I know he's extremely good. I don't know if he's that good. We'll have to see how he plays in the fall, but this guy is an absolute baller. Let's see what else they have to say. Moore has the length, the size, the coverage skills, and the dominance through his first 2 collegiate seasons to warrant such a high standard. The only reason he's available here is due to the top-heavy quarterback class. Otherwise, Moore could easily be a top 5 pick and still may be when it's all said and done. That's very true. Leonard Moore is an absolute baller. He could easily go in the top 5. This guy is an amazing cornerback, and we'll see what happens in 2027, but the Saints are also a great pick for him. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Leonard Moore, that would be a fun secondary. At number 10, the New York Giants select Cam Coleman out of Texas. I was talking about him earlier. The Giants receiver room is crazy right now, and I definitely don't think that Giants will be going with a receiver in 2027 because I really do think Malachi Fields is going to truly break out into a star player, even an 1,000-yard potential player. But let's see what they have to say about him. They say that Malik Neighbors is a legitimate number 1 target when healthy. Obviously, from there, the Giants lack a legitimate second and third option. Texas's Cam Coleman is the type of target that can make life easier on everyone because he has the size and speed to charge the field and decompress opposing defenses. That is very true. I am very high on Cam Coleman. He's another guy. He would have been the first receiver off the board in 2026. He would have gone ahead of Carnell Tate. This guy's an absolute baller. I'm super excited to see what he does at Texas now. He transferred from Auburn, obviously, with Arch Manning as his quarterback in this new offense. Obviously, at Auburn, he didn't have any elite quarterback play. Now he has Arch Manning, so he actually has the potential to truly show how good he really is now. And if Malachi Fields doesn't turn out, if Odell Beckham Jr., Juju Smith-Schuster, Braxton Berrios, if those guys all flop, then I could definitely see the Giants going receiver, and Cam Coleman is a home run pick if you need a wide receiver at least. Whoa! The Carolina Panthers at number 11 taking quarterback Lenora Sellers. I saw the name Lenora Sellers and I saw the team and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. They have the Panthers taking a quarterback. NFL teams tend to overreact after a significant mistake. Bryce Young enters the 4th year of his rookie contract without the Carolina Panthers knowing whether the 2023 number 1 overall pick is their long-term answer at quarterback. Regression indicates he isn't, which means the Panthers will be searching for a replacement. That is a crazy hot take. I honestly do think Bryce Young is the guy in Carolina, but let's read what more they had to say. A lack of size and raw arm talent were the biggest questions about Young prior to his draft selection. The same can be said of South Carolina's Lenora Sellers. I mean, that is true. He is 6'5". He has an absolute crazy arm, and he can run like Lamar Jackson. Lenora Sellers is an absolute beast. He is probably my QB3 right now, honestly. I would have Arch Manning, Dante Moore, and then Lenora Sellers. Let's see what else they have to say. 6'3", 240-pound Sellers is a tremendous athlete with raw arm talent to spare. A year ago, the 20-year-old garnered number 1 overall pick projections based on his immense upside. He didn't show enough growth to stay in that conversation. However, another year at South Carolina, coupled with positive development as a passer, will once again place Sellers among the top quarterback options. I mean, I agree with everything they said here, but I just don't think Carolina is going to be the team to take Sellers. I think Bryce Young is the guy there. Obviously, if Bryce Young has a terrible season, yes, this would make sense, but based off what we saw last year, it really seems like moving forward, they want Bryce Young to be their franchise quarterback, and they're definitely building around him. Obviously, Lenore Sellers is an absolute dog. Everything they say about him is true, but the Panthers selecting him is kind of a questionable choice if you ask me. At number 12, they have the Washington Commanders selecting wide receiver Nick Marsh from Indiana. I'm not super duper familiar with the 2027 class yet. I know quite a few of the names, but I haven't done a lot of research on them yet. Nick Marsh is definitely a guy I haven't really looked into, but based off where I'm seeing him projected, I think this might be a little bit of a reach. The Washington Commanders could have done more this offseason to help the quarterback Jaden Daniels and wide receiver Terry McLaurin. Obviously, Washington does need a receiver, so drafting a receiver makes sense here for sure. Whereas Nick Marsh should experience a huge profile increase thanks to his transfer decision, going from Michigan State to the reigning national champion Indiana Hoosiers. Marsh will benefit greatly from all the improved surrounding cast, specifically quarterback John Hoover slinging him the ball. Again, I don't know a lot about Nick Marsh, but obviously Indiana is probably the #1 team in the nation right now. So having the #1 receiver from the #1 team is probably a safe bet here for Washington, who desperately needs weapons for Jaden Daniels. At number 13, we finally have an offensive lineman go off the board, and that is the Minnesota Vikings taking Trevor Goosby from Texas. With 6 quarterbacks off the board already, the Minnesota Vikings managed to look elsewhere to adjust the game's most important position. That's weird because I do think Kyler Murray will be the guy in Minnesota. Obviously, he's on the 1-year deal, but I think an extension will probably get done because I believe in Kyler Murray, and we have seen time and time again that Kevin O'Connell is the veteran whisperer, and he is able to turn veteran quarterbacks into absolute studs. Obviously, Goosby is the #1 offensive tackle in this class, and the #1 priority for the Vikings should be to protect whoever their quarterback is going to be. It's either going to be this or defensive, especially their secondary. They say that Goosby is a natural left tackle, though he does have some experience on the right side. He showed marked improvement during his first full year as a starter. He can flip sides in Minnesota while also serving as an insurance, since Christian Darrisaw has yet to play a full regular season slate during his 5-year career. That's the thing with this pick that I was thinking too. Christian Darrisaw is obviously a great player, but unfortunately injuries have kind of derailed his career at this point. So if you're Minnesota here, I think they're going with a better safe than sorry approach and drafting someone to actually give them a reliable left tackle, because obviously Darrisaw is good, but he's never on the field. So hopefully if they take Goosby, he can actually stay healthy and be on the field and be the franchise left tackle that every team hopes to have. At number 14, the New York Jets got this pick from the Sauce Gardner trade, and they have them taking Ellis Robinson, the 5th from Georgia. And I mentioned that they got this pick in the Sauce Gardner trade, and this would actually be them drafting Sauce Gardner's replacement, as obviously they're both DBs, they're both corners, and I'm pretty high on Ellis Robinson. I think he's not the best prospect in the world, obviously, but he is still a very solid corner, and I'm excited to see what he can do this fall at Georgia. They say here that Ellis Robinson has as much upside as anyone in next year's class. The former 5-star recruit figured it out in year 2 despite playing very little as a true freshman and not opening the 2025 campaign as a starter. When Robinson is reacting and simply letting his skill set take over, he's an impressively fluid mover with quick fire feet and gumpy like hips. Despite his size, 6 foot, 180 pounds, he also plays with an impressive level of physicality. That's what I'm saying. He is definitely not a home run, A+ type prospect here. There's definitely a lot. He's more of an upside, low floor, high ceiling type of guy, obviously with that small frame. The underclassman has all the necessary traits to be a top corner at the professional level, which gives the Jets another answer at the second premium position. That is true. The Jets definitely do need to address their secondary. Robinson is the best player on the board at this point in terms of secondary, so this pick makes a lot of sense here. And if Robinson can prove that he is actually capable of being consistent and an elite corner at the next level, then I think that he will definitely go high in the first round of the draft. But we'll wait and see what happens during the fall. At number 15, they have the Chicago Bears selecting. That's odd. I don't know. It's kind of weird that they have the Bears selecting number 15, and they've been going with Quincy Rhodes Jr. from Arkansas. Surprisingly, the Chicago Bears didn't address their biggest need this offseason. The team lacks pass rush help opposite Montez Sweat. If something doesn't change between now and next April, another talented defensive end is the obvious choice. I think defensive end should have been the choice for the Bears in last year's draft. Obviously, Dylan Thieneman somehow fell to them, so they selected him, which I'm not blaming them for, but they definitely still do need help on their defensive line. Again, not super familiar with this class, but I think Quincy Rhodes Jr. might be a little bit of a reach here. They say that he emerged as a second-team All-SEC performer last season after posting 15.5 tackles for loss and 8 sacks. He is 6'6", 277 pounds, and he displays NFL caliber power to set the edge and threaten offensive tackles with a bull rush. He's not the type of pass rusher to fly off the edge, bend the corner, and flatten towards the quarterback. However, his pass rush plan showed some promise last season and should continue to expand this fall. So they're definitely banking off the fact that he will develop more bend and more speed in his game, which obviously is extremely valuable in the NFL. As of right now, I definitely think 15 is a little bit too high for him, considering that he's more of just a pure bull rusher type guy. But they're definitely going off the fact that they think he will develop here. But regardless, the Bears do need edge rushers, so at this point, they should definitely be taking the best edge rusher on the board. That definitely won't be at 15. The Bears are probably going to be better than that. I think they're definitely going to make the playoffs again, but we'll see what happens. At number 16, they have the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting offensive tackle Jordan Seaton from LSU. Obviously, Seaton transferred from Colorado to the SEC now, where he's going to face some tough defensive line play. We all know that the trenches play in the SEC is brutal. I think this pick makes a lot of sense here because the Jaguars obviously do need help at the offensive tackle position. Protecting Trevor Lawrence should definitely be their number one priority. There is quite a few holes on the roster. Their secondary isn't great. Their defensive line is pretty solid, and their front seven is okay. However, offensive line is probably their biggest position group of need, so Seaton makes a lot of sense here. Lawrence was the 6th most sacked quarterback last season. Cole Van Lanier currently mans the quarterback blindside after taking over Jacksonville starting left tackle in Week 14. The former 6th-round pick draft will have a chance to prove himself this fall. However, the Jags should be strongly eyeing next year's offensive tackle class. That's very true. If I'm being honest, you can say I don't know ball. I don't know who Cole Van Lanier is. He's probably not that good. Cian had a lot of potential from Colorado to LSU, and I think that if he's on the board for Jacksonville, they should definitely take him. Here is the Jets' 3rd pick here. They're going to have 3 picks in the first 17 picks here, according to Bleacher Report. That's pretty crazy. And they have them taking David Stone out of Oklahoma. I've heard nothing but really, really good things about David Stone on the interior. They're saying that this guy is just an absolute freak. He's a mauler, one of the best defensive tackle prospects that we have seen in a while. And obviously, after trading Quinton Williams, the Jets do need help on the interior defensive line. And I'm just imagining David Stone, David Bailey. We got the 2 Davids lined up against each other. That would be a scary duo. They say that Oklahoma's David Stone is a relentless upfield defender. The 6'3", 315-pound prospect must continue his development as an interior pass rusher. However, he gives the Jets a more disruptive option to reset the line of scrimmage and collapse the pocket, which will only maximize Will McDonald and David Bailey working off the edges. Again, that's a scary defensive line to think of, so if the Jets can get a defensive lineman as good as Stone here, that would be great for them. At number 18, they have the Cincinnati Bengals taking offensive lineman Caden Green from Missouri. The Bengals are a team, in my opinion, that as of right now, there's not a lot of holes on the roster, but I would definitely think they would be going with secondary or linebacker here, considering they didn't really address that enough in the draft. I know they signed some good players in their secondary, Brian Cook, of course, but they didn't really sign any off-ball linebackers, so I think that would be the pick here. But let's read what they have to say about Caden Green. He is arguably the nation's most powerful blocker. He also has experience starting at guard and left tackle. For the Bengals, the 6'5", 324-pound lineman fits the physical profile the team prefers, which will provide them with significant flexibility alongside his front 5. That's very true. I don't think this would be a bad pick here. I just think there's probably bigger needs on their team if they can't re-sign some of their interior offensive linemen who are currently on there. Green can immediately step in and replace Dalton Reisner at the right guard during his rookie campaign. The Missouri product then provides Cincinnati with an option to play him on Burrow's blind side whenever the organization decides to replace veteran Orlando Brown Jr. Those are all very good points, and I think that, honestly, Caden Green would be a very good pick for the Bengals here. This is all assuming the Bengals defense actually plays somewhat well last season instead of being the worst unit in the entire league. But if the defense does improve, then I think offensive line is probably the move here for the Bengals. And obviously, Caden Green, he's an absolute bowling ball. He's a freak. That would be great for Joe Burrow to ensure that he doesn't get injured again. Obviously, the Buccaneers have Cade Otton right now, but Cade Otton's nothing special, and a lot of people thought they were actually going to take Kenyon Sadiq in this year's draft. Obviously, they ended up going with Ruben Bain, not a bad pick, but they're definitely in the market for tight end still. Trez Green gives Tampa Bay Buccaneers an ideal complementary duo at tight end. Obviously, we're entering more of a 2 tight end league at this point, where teams will definitely have 2 tight ends out on the field at least 50% of the time. The 6'7", 237-pound prospect can create mismatches while operating detached from the line of scrimmage. His size and length are an ideal fit for quarterback Baker Mayfield, who has shown a tendency to miss high when his accuracy falters. Green can't be a direct replacement for Mike Evans, who left the franchise after 12 seasons and signed with the San Francisco 49ers. However, the incoming prospect's frame and catch radius brings a completely different dynamic when working alongside Tampa's top 3 receivers, who are all listed at 6'1". Again, the Buccaneers adding another pass-catching option would go a long way to help them in the not-so-competitive NFC South. So yeah, can't really complain about this pick here. A big, fast, pass-catching tight end is probably what the Buccaneers need right now to help Baker Mayfield. So can't really complain about this pick here. A big, fast pass-catching So you can't really complain about this pick right here. A big, fast pass-catching tight end is just what Baker Mayfield needs right now, probably, to, again, help him when the play breaks down and his accuracy starts to falter. At number 20, they have the Dallas Cowboys selecting... Okay, this is very interesting when it comes to the receivers, because Ryan Williams is not off the board on their mock draft yet here, and I get that Ryan Williams had a bit of a down year last year. Not even a bit of a down year. It was a bad season for Ryan Williams last year, but the potential is there for him, and I definitely think he will be going in the top 20. But here they have the Dallas Cowboys going with wide receiver Charlie Becker from Indiana. Interesting that they go with a wide receiver here, considering they have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. So let's see what they have to say about that. The Dallas Cowboys didn't reach a long-term contract extension with wide receiver George Pickens. Instead, Pickens will play under the franchise tag this fall. Thus, the Cowboys should be looking for another complimentary target next year if/when Pickens hits the free agent market. So they have Pickens leaving the team, actually, which I could definitely see happening. That guy is a bit of a drama queen, so I could see things not ending well there for him in Dallas. And they're going with Charlie Becker as the guy. They say Indiana's Charlie Becker gives the Cowboys a perfect weapon on the outside to work alongside Lamb. The 6'4", 270-pound Becker emerged as a serious deep threat during the Hoosiers' national championship run. He made the play in every big moment when called upon to do so. His size coupled with the vertical element will open the field for Lamb, much like Pickens does now. Obviously, with Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper now gone, Becker will have a big improved role in Indiana now. Obviously, without Mendoza at quarterback, it's kind of a question mark for how that's going to go, but it's definitely going to be a prove yourself year for Charlie Becker. And I don't know, we'll wait to see what happens in the fall, but this is definitely a guy whose draft stock could rise up a lot. At number 21, they have the Houston Texans taking tight end Jamari Johnson from Oregon. Oregon's Jamari Johnson is an explosive upfield target to threaten the seam and give CJ Stroud a large catch radius to help the quarterback, particularly on key downs or in the red zone. Again, the Texans do have a solid receiving core. Obviously, they have Dalton Schultz, but they are a team that is very complete, so best player available should probably be the strategy for them when it comes to the draft, and Jamari Johnson is a pretty solid player from what I've read on him at least. The 6'5", 257-pound tight end wasn't featured as much as Kenyon Sadiq last season. Sadiq did go in the 2026 as tight end 1. Johnson finished with only 50 fewer yards despite catching 32 passes compared to Sadiq's 51. The remaining Oregon tight end has the potential weapon thanks to his size and athleticism. I didn't know this, honestly, so obviously with Kenyon Sadiq gone, it's going to be a big year for Jamari Johnson at Oregon. Obviously, he's still got Dante Moore throwing the ball. We got Dylan Raiola over there now, but it should be a big year for him, and honestly, I would expect him to be the first tight end off the board. And with how much CJ Stroud struggled at the end of last year, giving him some more help on offense is probably the number one priority for the Texans. At number 22, we got another Oregon player going, and that is Amari Washington to the Denver Broncos, the inside defensive lineman. This is a perfect fit right here because the Broncos are a very, very complete roster, but the one thing they lack is interior defensive line. They say Washington isn't just a space eater, which is why he's worthy of a first-round consideration. He's a disruptive presence that violently sheds blocks and resets the line of scrimmage. His inclusion gives Denver something completely different than what the group currently features. They say DJ Jones is a confident interior defender and fits well within the Broncos scheme. However, he turns 32 next year, and none of his remaining contract is guaranteed beyond this upcoming season. Besides, Washington is bigger and stronger with athleticism that bellies his 6'3", 322-pound frame. This guy's an absolute freak of nature. The Broncos' defensive line is already as good as it is. I can't imagine what would happen if they add a guy like Washington to it. It would just be terrifying. I could definitely see the Broncos going secondary or linebacker here too. It's got to be someone on defense. That offense is already looking truly elite. The defense is elite too, but again, the defensive line, they're starting to get a little bit older, so getting some younger guys in there would probably be the best move for them. And Washington is looking to be an absolute beast and make an immediate impact in the NFL the day that he's drafted. They have the Broncos picking at 22 here. I don't know what will actually happen to the Broncos. We'll see if it was a one-year magical fluke year for the Broncos. I don't think it was. I think they're a very complete team, and by adding Amari Washington, that complete team would only get better. At number 23, they have the Whoa. This mock draft is absolutely crazy. I was not expecting this. The Philadelphia Eagles selecting quarterback Drake Lindsay. What? From Minnesota. What is this? What? Let's take a second here. What? The Philadelphia Eagles selecting a quarterback in the first round. Am I reading this right? This mock draft is absolutely wild, guys. The tension in Philadelphia Eagles locker room was palpable. What? Okay. Let's gather. With Brown gone, Jalen Hurts must show he can bounce back from last year's wildly inconsistent campaign. If he doesn't, the Eagles should look at other options. Did a Cowboys fan write this? Because Jalen Hurts' wildly inconsistent campaign consisted of 30 touchdowns and a playoff berth. And we're thinking about moving on from here? This is crazy. No disrespect to whoever wrote this, but this is crazy to suggest that the Eagles' biggest need is a quarterback in the first round. They say that Minnesota's Drake Lindsay provides Philly with a long runway. The 20-year-old prospect is expected to show significant growth during his second season as a starter, but the flashes were apparent last year. The 6'5", 230-pound quarterback has a big arm to throw on all three levels. More consistency will increase his draft value, while the Eagles can realistically get out of Hurts' deal in 2028. Okay, so clearly a Jalen Hurts hater wrote this because, what? Drake Lindsay definitely could be a good quarterback. I don't see him as a first-round pick at all, but having the Eagles take him is just wild. Okay, let's move on here. Let's move on. The next pick is probably going to be the Chiefs selecting a quarterback as well. Number 24, the Kansas City Chiefs. It was the Chiefs, but they're selecting wide receiver Omari Miller from Arizona State. Okay, now we're back on track with one that makes a lot more sense. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes does not have a reliable wide receiver right now. Obviously, Rashee Rice is very talented, but I wouldn't call him reliable just due to the fact that he's never, like, he gets in so much off the field controversy that you can't trust him to actually be available for your quarterback, which is what you need in your football players, especially the ones that you're going to be paying big money to. So a receiver is definitely the biggest need here for the Chiefs. I still think they will end up signing Tyreek Hill, but that's probably only for 1 or 2 years. So they're going to need a true number 1 target for Mahomes soon, with Travis Kelce out the door and with so many question marks on Rashee Rice. They say that Omari Miller transferred from Colorado to Arizona State, where he gets to learn and develop under Hines Ward as his wide receiver coach. Miller already showed explosive traits during his time with the Buffaloes. Now he can clean up the inconsistencies within his game and elevate his status as a legitimate top option. Again, this guy, I mean, I don't know a lot about him, obviously, because I guess it's June right now. We're yet to see all these guys play on their new teams yet, but receiver is definitely the move for the Chiefs in next year's draft, and whoever the best one is, that's just who they should take. And if Bleacher Report thinks it's Omari Miller, then okay, then Omari Miller is probably pretty good. At number 25, they have the Detroit Lions selecting Boubacar Troyer. Okay, I pronounced that wrong. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not that familiar with who this guy is. I've definitely heard the name, but never had to say it out loud yet. So let's see what they have to say about him. They said the idea of the Detroit Lions truly upgraded defensive end by finding a long-term bookend opposite the squad's talent edge rusher had been in play for nearly a decade. It dates back to Ziggy Onshaw's time with the team. Now Aiden Hutchinson is looking for a capable running mate. That's true. I'm pretty sure they drafted, was it Derek Harmon in this year's draft? Or it was someone from Michigan they drafted to be, I can't remember his name right now for some reason, but someone to play alongside Aiden Hutchinson on the defensive line. So we'll see how that turns out, but obviously, again, he's not proven to be good yet, so we'll see if the Lions actually do need to add another edge rusher going into next season. They say that Boubacar Troyer brings natural bend and athleticism off the edge to provide the type of skill set that fits well with a well-rounded rotational pass rusher option early in his career, with the potential to develop into an every down defender. If anything, the combination of his and Moore's skill set, that's who it is, Derek Moore, should be considered complementary. That is true. If you can get 2 solid rotational pieces to pair alongside the already elite Aiden Hutchinson, I see that as a win for the Lions. If this guy has a great year, that would make a lot of sense here. I think the edge or defensive line will be the move for the Lions in the 2027 draft. But of course, so much can change in the season. But as of right now, I would say that edge is probably the Lions' biggest need. At number 26 here, they have the San Francisco 49ers selecting offensive tackle Trevor Locke from Iowa. Now, this would be the Trent Williams replacement, obviously, and I feel like I've been mocking that for like at least 2 years now. I've been drafting the Trent Williams replacement, but it just seems like he's going to play forever for some reason. Now, Trevor Locke is definitely a guy that I'm more familiar with in this class. He's a big dude. He became their starting left tackle last season, and he was absolutely phenomenal, playing on that dominant Iowa offensive line alongside Jennings Dunker. As of right now, he's one of the best tackles in the class, and if the Niners can get the Trent Williams replacement in the first round, that's the ideal spot to land him, then you can't pass up on that opportunity. At number 27, they have the Los Angeles Chargers selecting Kingston Vialamu Asa. That's a name I actually can't pronounce because this is a guy that I'm very familiar with. He is an absolute stud. I think he's the best off-ball linebacker in the class, and I think that he is a great fit for the Chargers. Obviously, he tore his ACL last year, which that really hurt his draft stock, but when he does play, he is an absolute stud, and let's see what they have to say about him. They say that Vialamu Asa is coming off a torn ACL, though he can quickly regain his status once he bounced back onto the field. Again, that's very true. Talented players like Vialamu Asa, they don't let these ACL injuries slow them down. ACL injuries really aren't what they used to be, so I expect him to bounce back once he makes it back onto the field. The 20-year-old prospect is a smooth athlete capable of being used all over the field. Vialamu Asa triggers quickly, plays downhill, finishes upon first contact, and even rushes off the edge situationally. He can be another positionless chess piece in the Chargers defense. Obviously, we see these Swiss Army knife prospects like Arvell Reese, like Isaiah Simmons. Obviously, he didn't turn out that well in the NFL, but he went very high in the draft. They go high in the draft. Like Arvell Reese, obviously, Vialamu Asa isn't as big as Arvell Reese, but again, if you get that Swiss Army knife defender who can play all over the field, teams really, really value that. So I think 27 actually might be a little bit too low compared to where Vialamu Asa will be going in real life. And Jim Harbaugh would definitely love to get a key playmaker like this to his defense. I'd love the pick here. I love Vialamu Asa. I think he's a great prospect, and I think the Chargers is a perfect fit for him. At number 28, they have the New England Patriots selecting cornerback Kelly Jones from Mississippi State. You see, the idea of Mississippi State's Kelly Jones playing opposite of Pro Bowl cornerback Christian Gonzalez is frightening. I completely agree with that. Having another elite corner to pair alongside Gonzalez would just elevate this Patriots defense to the next level. It's already elite, but adding another corner would definitely take it to the next level. They say that bigger corners tend not to be as fluid in coverage. Despite Jones' size, he can flip his hips and stay in phase much better than anticipated. He won't move like a much smaller corner, of course, yet he makes up the difference thanks to his outstanding length and solid ball skills. Again, big, strong corners definitely are valuable in the NFL. He is listed at 6'4", 195 pounds, and so he is the perfect pair to go alongside Gonzalez, and if he's on the board for the Patriots, I don't see why not. At number 29, they have the Baltimore Ravens selecting running back Jaden Baugh from Florida. We finally have the first running back off the board. I think 2027 is an absolutely loaded year for running backs. I don't know if Baugh will be the first one off the board. I also think 29 will be a little bit too late for the first running back. I think we'll definitely have one go earlier, whether it be Hardy or Mark Fletcher or Jaden Baugh even. But obviously Jaden Baugh is an absolute beast, and I think that in my mock draft, I actually had the Ravens taking running back because Derrick Henry's not going to play forever, so they're going to need to replace him eventually. Ball can initially serve in a complementary role, spelling Henry to extend his... See, there are a lot of spelling mistakes in this for some reason. I'm just gonna call that out now. Like, I mean all respect to whoever wrote this. I think that working at Bleacher Report that's one of my dreams. I respect everyone who works at Bleacher Report, but this mock draft is something. Like, there is a lot of spelling mistakes here and some questionable picks, like spelling Henry to extend his shelf life. They mean Henry. Then eventually taking over as the Ravens' offensive workhorse. Again, that is exactly what I just said. I think that drafting Derrick Henry's replacement is the move here for Baltimore. Whatever running back has the best season in college is definitely the move for them. Obviously, we still have the whole season to go, so we don't know which one will be the best, but I don't know if Baugh will be the best, but I think it's a safe bet to say that he will go high in the draft. At number 30, they have the Seattle Seahawks selecting edge Anthony Smith from Minnesota. Obviously, the Seahawks lost quite a few key contributors on their defense. They replaced most of them in the draft. However, they didn't replace Boye Mafe, so drafting an edge rusher here makes a lot of sense for them. The Seattle Seahawks are aging along their defensive line and need an infusion of youth among the talented position group. DeMarcus Lawrence turns 35, and Leonard Williams turns 32. So exactly, the only really young stud they have on this defensive line is Byron Murphy. So if we can get another young stud to come in here, that would be perfect for them. They say that Anthony Smith adds instant flexibility along the front thanks to his 6'6", 285-pound frame. The first team All-Big Ten performer set career high last season with 17.5 tackles for loss and 12.5 sacks. He can work off the edge and even from 2-point stance while reducing down in sub packages depending on the situation. Head coach, defensive play caller Mike McDonald can use Smith's size and length as a chess piece alongside or opposite the recently re-signed Derek Hall, as well as Byron Murphy. Whatever edge rusher is best available on the board is who the Seattle Seahawks should take. Anthony Smith is an absolute dog. We'll see how he plays next season. Again, I say this about every prospect basically, but we still have a whole season to go, so a lot will change. This is, again, a way too early mock draft, but we'll see what happens. But as of right now, Seahawks, Anthony Smith Jr., that's a perfect fit. The Oregon Ducks had 3 defenders drafted in this year's initial first 4 rounds, including safety Dylan Thiemann in the opening frame, as seen in the progression to more projected early picks, not including defensive end Mateo Ugalele and defensive Bear Alexander. I think they mean defensive tackle because that's what position Bear Alexander plays, but another spelling mistake here. Last season, Tuam Totu had stretches where he was the squad's most disruptive performer, constantly getting into the backfield and wrecking plays. Again, Oregon has a very, very dominant defense right now, and I could see any one of the 3 guys they listed here going in the first round, but here they go with Hiotu. For the Buffalo Bills, the organization didn't do enough this offseason transitioning their personnel to fit Jim Leonard's defensive scheme. Bradley Chubb's signing, TJ Parker's selection. I don't really agree with that. I think that edge rusher is probably not the move for Buffalo here. Obviously, Greg Rousseau had a very, very strong year last year. He's very underrated. He is an amazing run stopper, and they drafted TJ Parker and Bradley Chubb to get that pass rush production. So I don't know if pass rush is the Bills' biggest need here. But if there's a super, super good one on the board at 31, I don't see why you wouldn't take him if Bradley Chubb and TJ Parker really don't turn out in their first years. But I think maybe going with secondary or linebacker would probably be a bigger position of need for the Bills. And rounding things out, they have the Cleveland Browns pick from the LA Rams, and they have us going with Ahmed Moten Sr., the defensive lineman from Miami. This pick is interesting here because I would think that the Browns would probably go more into their secondary, considering that we don't have that much depth at corner past Denzel Ward. But defensive line would make sense if a really good one is on the board here. They say that Moten is an upfield penetrator and one of the nation's best interior pass rushers. At times, he was a Miami defender, creating the most havoc during the Hurricanes' run this past season. That's a pretty big feat, considering that Keem Mesidor and Ruben Bain Jr. were both on that defensive line. They say that right here. Keep in mind, Miami's defense ends, Ruben Van Jr. and Akeem Esdor became first-round picks in this past April's draft. So, again, that was a very, very dominant defensive line. So now that both those guys are in the league, Ahmed definitely has a chance to prove himself as that it wasn't just a fluke and that he wasn't getting carried, and that he really is a disruptor in this game and that he can be the best player on a defensive line. The trio of Moton, the recently acquired Jared Verse, and last year's fifth overall pick Mason Graham gives Cleveland an attacking front to ensure the side of the ball doesn't lose its identity after moving on from all-time greats. I completely agree with all of this. I think if the Browns can land a super, super good defensive lineman with the pick that we acquired, it would mean we got Jared Verse and another really good defensive lineman, and we shipped out Myles Garrett. Obviously, we're not replacing Myles Garrett. He's the best player in the league, but it would go a long ways in helping this Browns team and reestablishing that defensive line after losing the best player in the whole world. And that will do it for the video, guys. And even though I was being a little bit critical, a huge thanks goes out to Bleacher Report for making this article. I'm a huge fan of Bleacher Report and everything that they do, and I appreciate that they make all these fun articles for me to look at and review. I appreciate you guys for making it all the way to the end of the video, and if you enjoyed it, please make sure you like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.